Hello, and welcome to another episode of Aaron's Baking Corner. Today, we're making chocolate chip cookies, but not just any chocolate chip cookies, because that would be too easy. I actually have two kind of chocolate chip cookie recipes that I go to now. One is a salted caramel chocolate chip cookie, and then the other is a brown butter chocolate chip cookie. And today I'm making the brown buttered one because I just wanted the smell of brown butter in my life. However, I'm gonna do like a little bit of a test here at the end. When I bake them, I'm going to bake a normal one, and then I'm gonna put some caramel in the other, and I'm gonna see like, can I fuse them together? I'm a bit curious because the brown butter already kind of brings a bit of a butterscotch toffee flavor to it. So the caramel might be a bit of overkill, but there's only one way to find out, and that involves me eating two cookies. And you know, I'll take one for the team, guys. It's my honor and my duty to do these things, but I do it for you. But before we get into any kind of baking or cooking related activities, I obviously need to tell you about the happenings of my life. And you might have noticed, one, I got a lapel mic, which hopefully the audio is good on, because the issue with audio is I don't know what it sounds like while I'm recording. So periodically I'm gonna rewatch what I'm doing, I guess, and then pray that I don't mess it all up and have to refilm it all, because that would not be fun. But hopefully I figure this thing out and I don't ruin it for everybody. And hopefully it sounds better, because that was the reason why I got it, is so that I sound less echoey in my kitchen and the mic is here instead of all the way over there by the camera. And the other thing is it's a long weekend, which is always nice because you get an extra day off to do who knows what. And then finally, not really as big, well, I guess in some senses it could be kind of like a big deal, but I've started stretching, which is a big deal for me because I don't ever do it. I'm extremely active, I run a lot, but I never stretch, which probably isn't good for me. It's so boring. So I just need to find like, I'm just listening to audiobooks right now while I'm doing it. But it's a drag and it hurts, and you're just sitting there. It's a lot of things that I don't typically like doing. Like I don't just sit. I just gotta stick with it and build up a habit, and then it'll become normalized in my head and I won't hate it as much. I'll get there. All right, without further ado, I've talked about my life enough. Let's get into baking some cookies. All right, first thing, let's run through those ingredients. Butter, flour, baking soda, salt, sugar, eggs, vanilla, brown sugar, chocolate chips, coarse salt. Game plan. First up, we're going to brown the butter, and then after it's browned, we're going to remove it from heat, put it into just a normal bowl, whisk in an ice cube, and then put that in the refrigerator for it to cool. While it's cooling, we're going to mix together what I'm in my head kind of calling the dry ingredients, which is going to be just the flour, the baking soda, and the salt. Then in the stand mixer, using the whisk attachment, because we're actually using multiple attachments today, is going to be, first up is the sugar, not the brown sugar, because that comes later. The sugar, eggs, and the vanilla. So that's going in there, mixing that up for a fair bit. And then after that's mixed, we're going to then add in the brown sugar and the cooled browned butter. So that's going in then. And then you're gonna put on the paddle attachment and then paddle that all up. until it's like incorporated together. Then we're gonna add in the flour mix, which is like the dry mix that I mentioned earlier. Then add in the chocolate chips. And then after all that, you pretty much have the cookie dough. However, with this one, you wanna let it sit overnight. So this is gonna be a 2-day project, surprise. I'm just gonna, put it in a bowl, cover it, put it in the refrigerator, and then tomorrow is when I'm gonna bake them at 325 for 13 to 16 minutes. And then afterwards, sprinkle with coarse salt, and then we're good to go. Obviously, I'm gonna do the test of one with a caramel in it and one without. But besides that, that's all the steps that we have. So let's start making some cookies. So step 1 is going to be to brown the butter, and the process of browning it kind of, it changes the butter kind of like flavor profile a little bit. It's gonna make it have a little bit more of a butterscotch or a like a nutty flavor to it, I guess. It definitely, you'll smell it, like when you're browning it, it has a very kind of strong nutty smell to it. It just smells fantastic. If you've never browned butter before, do it. Find a recipe, use this one, find a different one, I don't care, just type in browned butter and then let Google fill in the blank and then make that, because it's great. We're just gonna be kind of swirling it in the pan and then just keeping an eye on it as it gets darker. You don't really wanna leave this and like walk away because it will turn very quickly. So just keep an eye on it. It doesn't take too long. Don't wander off. Now that we have the browned butter, the next step is going to be to whisk in that ice cube and then put it in the refrigerator and let it cool. The next step is going to be to mix together the dry ingredients, and that's just the flour, the baking soda, and the salt. This recipe encourages you to measure things by weight instead of volume, like we usually do with like cups and such. In this step, I'm gonna show you like how I'm measuring those with a scale. Then the rest of the ingredients that I'm using, I'm not gonna show that, but I just kind of wanted to show you, like if you've never used a kitchen scale before, this is a kind of a quick, easy way to show you how it's done. The big idea of it is just put a bowl on it. Ideally not something too heavy because the scale, I think, has limits. You put the bowl on there, you zero it out, so then it goes back down to 0, and then you add things to measure from there. Like the flour is like 280, so I just fill it up until it says 280 because we started at 0. And then, because I'm lazy, I guess you could zero it out again and then add the other ingredients. That's not how I'm gonna do it. But yeah, so I add the flour, and then I'll add the baking soda, and then I'll add the salt, and just kind of add those up. I think the final total weight should be 287. But yes, that's just kind of how you use a scale rather than cups. I mean, I do scoop it in with cups to kind of make sure that my scale's not broken, because it should be around like 2 cups of flour. So I'm kind of making sure it's like a quality control because I mean, it's not a, scientific scale. This thing is a relatively inexpensive kitchen scale that, you can get on Amazon. But it's always good to double check. Was it measure twice, cut once? I mean, that's woodworking, not baking, but I think the sentiment applies. The next step is going to be to in the stand mixer, whisk together the eggs, the sugar, and the vanilla. And you're actually gonna be whisking that for, I think it says 5 minutes. And the way you kind of know when it's done, it should become I think they say pale brownish or like yellow, which I guess it just depends on like how strong the yolk color comes through. But the goal is it's going to be like ribbons off of the whisk when you stop it. And then like for me, I'm gonna lower the bowl down and then see, you know, is it in ribbons coming off of the whisk or not? And that's how you kind of gauge, is it done for this step. Now that we have that kind of ribbon state that I mentioned before, the next step is going to be to add in the brown sugar as well as the brown butter that has cooled from the refrigerator. And you know it's pretty much done. It should be, I want to say congealing. I feel like they use a better term in the recipe, but essentially like it's gonna, you know, becoming solid butter again around the edges, and the liquid itself is becoming opaque because it was clear before when you put it in, and now it should kind of becoming not transparent. Now that we have I guess all the wet ingredients mixed together, the next step is going to be to add in the flour, and you want to mix that until it's like until it incorporates, so you don't want to over mix it. Just kind of make sure that there's no flour left, and once you kind of hit that point, then you stop it. Next is to add in the chocolate chips, kind of quickly mix that on like a low speed, and then we have the dough done. After that, we're just gonna put that in a bowl and refrigerate that overnight. And then tomorrow we'll have chocolate chip cookies. It has been an overnight period, which to me feels like it's essentially should just say 24 hours, because I don't know about you, but I'm not really eating too many cookies for breakfast. So when it says overnight, it's gonna be like the following day's dessert. But that could just be my life choices. I'm not judging. And I will say the overnight is there for a reason. The recipe kind of outlines it a little bit more, gives some better kind of scientific terms for it. But if I remember correctly, it's the enzymes within, like the ingredients that we've combined are breaking down carbohydrates to, I guess, deepen or like enhance the flavor. The way my head thinks, it's like, oh, it's kind of like a marinade. The flavors are kind of like absorbing and like mixing a little bit more, rather than like yesterday when they were just combined, they're all kind of still separate. So now they're joined up a little bit better, so that when we bake them, it's gonna be a much better flavor. I'll probably put the actual explanation on screen and you can just read that while I just probably said nonsense. Let's hop into the actual baking process. The first step of baking the cookie dough that we have is going to be to somehow get a cookie dough ball. The recipe recommends to use like an ice cream scoop. I think they have cookie scoops out there, or just use a spoon. Whatever floats your boat. The goal is 3 tablespoons is like the amount that you want per cookie. And the recipe also mentions to tear the cookie dough like in half and like kind of re-put it back together, because then it gives you I think craggly edges or rugged edges. But so you're gonna see me do that. Then the other thing that's a little out of the ordinary is you want to do, the baking is 13 to 16 minutes, and the first half you want to bake on the upper middle is what it says of your oven, and then the second half on the lower middle. So figure out what that means in your oven. So now let's hop to me scooping out some cookie dough and then tearing it apart. And remember, I'm gonna make two, one with caramel in it, one without, and I'm gonna kind of compare those to see, will I get diabetes from eating too many cookies? Now that the cookies have cooled, I have them right here. We have, I don't want them to slide off, but we have the one without caramel and then the one with caramel, and we're gonna have to taste both of them to find out which is better. All right, first up is the cookie without caramel in it. I'd say that's like the stereotypical chocolate chip cookie that you'd think of. It's gooey in like the middle. It's not in the crispy cookie category at all. So if that's what you're into, I don't know if you need to find a new recipe or just bake it longer. But it definitely falls apart when you're kind of handling it. So it's not, you know, one of those cookies that you can just kind of take a bite out of and kind of handle with one hand. But I'm getting like the kind of toffee from the brown butter is there. It's not very forefront. So we're gonna see if the one with the caramel inside of it kind of has more of that, because that caramel will have spread out and kind of turned into a toffee almost, unless it's very well insulated and just became gooey. I'm gonna have to break apart the cookie to find out. Okay, so I have it here. The caramel definitely kind of got exposed, so it became a little bit more toffee-like, kind of became brittle. So I'm gonna take a bite right out of there and see how that tastes. The unfortunate thing is it is caramel, so it's sticking to my teeth and making it a little hard to fully eat it. The caramel, definitely much more of that like toffee forward flavor. So if you kind of want it to be much more kind of sweet, butterscotchy, put the caramel in there. If not, if you want more of like the traditional kind of chocolate chip cookie, just with more enhanced flavor, go without. However, while eating this, I did think, what if I cut up the caramel into smaller pieces, froze them, and then kind of mix them in with like the chocolate chips, and then you have like little kind of bursts of caramel. That is a future idea. All that being said, what you've been waiting for, the score. I mean, you can't go wrong with these. 5 out of 5. If you haven't made brown butter cookies before, go make them. I'm giving you a recipe. If you somehow, for whatever reason, don't like this recipe, go find a different one. Just brown some butter and eat it. Probably not straight. I don't know. I wonder what brown butter on popcorn would taste like. I might have to start an experiments section of my channel. And on that note, bye, Mom. Still not dead. See ya.